Seeing as it's Black Friday, well, week, and Christmas is just around the month-long corner, I thought now would be a good chance to do a bit of a sort of gift guide for car enthusiasts. If you are a car enthusiast, you can feel free to pass this video on to your loved ones if you want to give that as a bit of a hint. Or, of course, use it yourself if you like, or maybe just use it as a shopping list if you don't have, well, some or all of the things. But the first thing on the list is, of course, a Bmw E30 M3. These are stunning cars. They're very well renowned. They're also incredibly appreciating in value recently, so even high value models or high mileage models are kind of creeping up in value. Or maybe if you're more like me and you prefer the newer, fanciest things, then an Audi RS6 is a great alternative. I mean, it's an absolute monster, has 600 horsepower, 800 newton meters of torque, and is even in a state to fit the kids and the dogs and the shopping all in the back while still doing 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds. I know. Okay, yeah, no, I'm kidding. Don't worry. That's as much as any car enthusiast would love to wake up on Christmas morning and find an E30 M3 or an Audi RS6 outside. If you have between like 60 and like 130,000 pounds lying around, well, you know, to spend on a Christmas gift for your friends or family, then, well, you probably won't and definitely shouldn't be taking advice from an idiot in a YouTube video. So I'm going to keep everything on this list, the proper items on this list, as relatively cheap. So you're talking anywhere between like £5 and maybe up to 40, with the only exceptions generally being things like the experience vouchers, which might be more like 100 or maybe a bit more. But I'm trying to keep it as actually reasonable as possible. So let's jump into the proper sort of categories, if you like, starting with tools. Now, since a lot of us car lovers and enthusiasts tend to work on our own cars, it's probably a good idea to, well, sort of load them up with a collection of tools, especially some of the more niche ones or some of the ones that you often don't end up buying until you're already in a pinch and really kind of need that tool. And the first one is actually bolt extractors. Now, giving this as a gift to someone, especially someone who already works on their own cars, could come across as a bit of a jab at their abilities, if you like. But trust me when I say that having a set of these are specifically ones that are sort of bolt and nut extractors rather than snapped thread extractors. But either way, having something like this around is so incredibly useful, because I guarantee you that if you're working on your own cars or your friends and family's cars, you will snap bolts. There will be bolts, especially here in the UK, that are rusted to just complete, you know, you're never getting a socket or anything on that. But using a set of these actually might be able to get it off. So it's an incredibly useful addition to someone's toolkit that they often don't already have. One of the most universally useful tools, if they do anything on cars, is an oil filter wrench, or sort of oil filter pliers, if you like. You can get a number of different sort of sockets and attachments and things that should let you take oil filters off, but in my experience, the sockets, while incredibly useful, often aren't quite the right size, can sort of slip around, whereas a set of these pliers, which kind of look like channel locks but are a bit more specialized to oil filters, that is incredibly useful, incredibly effective, and they're also relatively cheap, so it's a great addition to anyone's toolbox. You might also want to add a set of e-torque sockets to their collection too. These are bolts that are often found on German cars and are often excluded from standard toolkits, so they might not have a set. And so a nice selection like this one could be a very useful addition, especially if they own a Volkswagen, an Audi, Skoda, Seat, maybe even BMW, Mercedes, Smart Car, and I'm sure plenty of other German brands that I haven't mentioned, but those are very often found and can't be removed without those sockets. And actually, speaking of sockets, you might want to go a slightly more basic route and get these wheel nut sockets. Now, technically speaking, there isn't anything overly special, and you can use standard, just sockets to take your wheel nuts off, but these ones in particular have a little plastic sheath around the outer edge, so that when you put the socket in, it doesn't scratch up the wheels and the chip the paint and that kind of thing as you're taking your bolts or nuts in or out. Quite useful, and also not horribly expensive either, so might be a good shout too. And you might want a torque wrench to tighten those wheels up to the proper factory recommended spec. A torque wrench, especially a manual one like the Silverline one that I've used in a number of these videos and have just had for a fair while, is relatively, or actually pretty cheap and incredibly useful. You can also get the smaller size one. The one that I have is a 1/2 inch drive, but I also have a smaller 3/8 inch drive from Draper specifically that has a lower torque range, so you can do smaller things like oil filter or oil sump plug bolts and things to the proper spec. Again, both of them are incredibly useful and not too expensive. Lastly, for tools, I would recommend an Obd2 scanner or reader like this one. This is a little wireless one. This is incredibly useful. I keep it in the car at all times so that no matter where I am or who I'm with, if they're having car issues, I can plug this in and read the fault codes and get an understanding of what's wrong with the vehicle. You can also use it for live data, which can also be really useful for diagnosing sort of intermittent issues. So yeah, big recommendation on this. And again, they're not exactly expensive. And actually, on a somewhat related note, you might also want to pick them up a Haynes manual if they don't have one already. There is the sort of original version, the sort of paperback or hard copy paper versions, or there are newer sort of online only ones which aren't quite manuals as much as they are a list of all of the torque settings, which are incredibly useful to have, by the way, and even a diagnostics sort of feature. Either one of those, whichever one is actually available for their vehicle, is incredibly useful to have if they don't have it already. If your giftee likes to detail and clean their car, there's a whole world of different options. Unfortunately, I'm not really one of those people, so I'll leave that to those sort of experts, but as a rough idea, things like some fancy microfiber towels to keep everything nice and clean is always a good shout. And also things like the car soaps and shampoos and waxes can also be a good shout. If they already have a collection of different soaps and waxes and things, it might be a good idea to check if you can which sort of brand and version they have, and probably which ones are running out so that you can sort of top them up rather than getting something perhaps that they're not quite as interested in. But as a generic option, the Auto Glim is still very well reviewed, so that can be a good fallback if that's where you want to go. If their car has some rock chips or little scratches, things like that, especially on the metal bodywork, things often like the bonnet or things like doors, that can be quite a bad thing because that metal will end up rusting and effectively make that panel either need some serious repairs or just fully replacing in time. So if they do have those sorts of little rock chips, then buying a sort of touch-up paint marker, you can often get them from places like Halfords here in the UK. It's a really good shout. It sort of protects the car, keeps it literally lasting longer, with the only caveat being if you are going to buy one, make sure that you keep the receipt handy, as buying the exact right paint color can be incredibly difficult. So you might need to have it swapped out for the exact paint color later on, so do keep that in mind. The last thing I want to mention is Experience Day vouchers. These can be anything from a ticket to a motorsport event, something like British Touring Cars, BTCC, or British Superbikes, which I think start from about £20 a ticket, Or of course, you can go the higher end, maybe WRC Rally, or if you've got plenty of money to spend, then of course a ticket to the F1 is always a pretty good time. You can also go with things like Go-Karting Vouchers. Those or a session tends to be about £30 to £40 per person, at least mostly on the indoor circuits. So again, if they have a track nearby, a voucher for go-karting is normally well received. One of the most common options for sort of car guy experience vouchers is the supercar days or supercar thrill, blast, whatever. And while those are a really great time, and it's often, at least for a lot of people, just being in the cars and getting to drive them around at all is, makes it all worth it. I would mention that if you're someone who likes to, really try and push the cars to really get an understanding for how they handle and drive properly, you might be a little, I suppose, not disappointed, but underwhelmed, I suppose, just because you often only get a couple of laps around the track, and you often have a instructor in the car with you who is normally quite sort of reserved in telling you what to do and how to drive the car, what you should be feeling for, whatever. And so it can be a little limited in that regard. It is still great. I would mention as well that you do often get somewhat nickel and dimed when you get to the event. You'll be asked to pay a waiver to waive the insurance excess liability, as in if you happen to crash the car while on track. If you pay the £10 to £50 waiver, you're not liable for anything else, but if you don't pay that £10 to £50 waiver, you'll be liable for their insurance excess, which is often around £5,000. So they kind of scare you into paying a little bit extra, but I would generally mention that as long as you're not a complete kind of idiot with it, the instructors really don't let you do anything that would cause you to crash the car in any way, and so personally I wouldn't be too worried about it as long as you're being sensible. They'll also ask you if you want to pay some extra for things like in-car video and exterior photos of the day. Again, it's up to you, but it is often extortionate pricing. And it's also finally worth mentioning that it depends on what tracks are available. If you're doing it at a sort of proper track, something like Silverstone, Donington, Cadwell, Snetterton, all of the sort of big name tracks, you're probably going to have a much better time than if you're doing it at a small random airfield. Lastly, I thought I'd mention the sort of skid pan experiences. Specifically, the one at Thruxton down in Hampshire is a fantastic time. It's £99 at the moment, and what that gets you is a sort of morning or half day driving a Mini, a front wheel drive Mini, and a rear wheel drive Toyota GT86 on their skid pan, of course drifting them around, but also learning how to control that oversteer or understeer, also how to control oversteer in a front wheel drive car, which is an interesting one. And even learning about ABS and sort of how that feels and works. And so it's a really good day, and you can even pay a bit extra for the voucher cost to bring your own car on if you're that way inclined. So that's a quick look at some of the things I guess I would recommend if you're looking to get some gifts for your car enthusiast friends and family. If you have any of your own suggestions, feel free to leave those in the comments down below. I will leave links to at least some of the products, things like the tools and that sort of thing in the description. Those will be Amazon affiliate links that will take you to your local Amazon store where you can see pricing when and where you watch this and pick them up yourself if you fancy. And I'll leave some links to some of the other experiences, things like the Haynes manuals and Thruxton in the description down there as well, if you're interested. If you want to see more videos like this one on a weekly basis, then do hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell notification icon, or check out some more videos on the end cards. I have plenty of different ones available, things like tech reviews like the Racebox GPS meter, or car reviews, also a load of how-to guides, a load of stuff, so feel free to check it out. Otherwise, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it, we'll see you on the next video.